Hello everyone and welcome back to JavaScript lessons on Codecademy. So in the last few videos we have been trying to figure out how objects work. Today we will be actually making an object that can be used in an everyday situation. So let's just get started. Digitizing people is the name of what we're going to be doing. So it's just one whole section and it's one lesson. You will see what I mean. So we need to look at the code in the editor. We have Bob's information stored in an associative array named Bob, as we can see here. Bob has a property called firstName, which has a value of Bob. Similarly, it has properties lastName, phone number, as well as email, which each have values. To access the values for each property, we write array.property. Check out line 8, so this line, where we log to the console bob.firstName. So copying the format we used on line 8, 9, and 10. So we need to fill in lines 8 and 9 and 10 so that Bob's last name and email are printed out. Okay, so that's easy. We can easily just copy this, paste it in both places, but instead of first name, we just copy last name for here and phone number for the second one. So it's not asking us, it needs last name and email, not phone number. Okay, so it's not asking us for a phone number. I guess we will see why later on. More people. Just like with strings and numbers, we can put multiple objects into an array. We want to practice extracting information from different objects which are stored in the same array. This allows us to put all of our contact objects into a unified list. If the objects are contact entries, then the list is the book binding that ties all of the contact entries together. So what we need to do then is create an object called Mary. So how do you do that again? I think it was something like this. So Mary equals object, and yeah, then you can fill it up, or I actually don't remember how this was done. That is bad. Oh, it means like an array object, not okay. So it doesn't mean like an object, it just means like an array. Okay, so let's do that then. So let's just ignore that I saw the hint. Create an object called Mary. It has the same properties as Bob. Her name is Mary Johnson, her phone number is that, and her email is that. I think that we're actually supposed to do it with curly braces instead though. So, like Bob, okay? So I can easily copy that, but just change her information. First name I'm guessing is going to be Mary. It has the same properties as Bob. Her name is Mary Johnson, so we can put Johnson as her last name. Phone number, we can just copy this and put it there. And her email is maryjohnson.example@example.com. There we go. So now we need to create an array called contacts. And this is actually where the square brackets come in. And I need the var keyword. Put Bob in first at index 0, then Mary at index 2. So Bob and then Mary. Write a console.log statement that prints out Mary's phone number. Okay, we can do that. So we need to console.log Mary. Oops. Well, it depends how it wants us to do it. We can either do it directly through Mary, or we can do it using the contacts list, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do contacts, access the first index, so that's going to be Mary because Bob is at 0, and then take that dot, what do we need to access? We need to access her phone number. So we just copy phone number after the dot, and that should work. There we go. So let's explain why this works. When we do contacts at the index of 1, we take Mary. So instead of this, the program reads this as the same as Mary dot. So contacts with the index of 1 is the same thing as Mary and then whatever continues. So because this is Mary, we do Mary.phone number and we get her phone number printed out to our console. If that doesn't make complete sense, feel free to ask in the comments below. I'm sure I can explain it maybe a bit better when I'm writing it down. Oops, I didn't mean to press the X there, so let's continue. Displaying people. We currently can print out information about any person in our contacts with console.log. That gets tiring if only we knew some code that stores blocks of code that we can call. Good thing we know about functions, so we can create a function that consistently displays a specific property of an object. What we need to do then is define a function called printPerson. So var printPerson, oops, not that capitalization, equals function. There we go. That takes a parameter person, and in the function body, print out the person parameter's first name property by accessing it with a dot just like before, then print a space, then their last name in the same way. So let's just do it. That's quite easy. We don't need to return it, so we don't need to return it. Person dot first name, and then we need I hope that I'm doing this right. I think that it asked us to put a space there, so I think that commas do work. If they don't, then I can change it with a plus, and then last name, and that should work. So then what we need to do is call the printPerson function to print out the first item in the contacts array. The first item in an array is at position 0. So we need to call printPerson with the argument of contacts at 0, index of 0. Then on the next line, so in our case line 23, printPerson again to print out the second item on contacts array. So you can just copy this line and instead of the 0 put a 1. Don't worry if your output appears twice, we're just double checking your code. Okay, we have done something wrong. Did you create a function called printPerson? Yes, I did. Save and submit code. That's weird. Oh, I named it printsPerson instead of printPerson. That's why. Let's see now. Oops, it looks like your function didn't log Bob Jones to the console. Did you remember to call your function on Bob? Yes, I did. That's weird. What about now? There we go. So you just need to use 1 comma instead of 2, because I think there was an extra space there which it confused for the surname instead of the Jones part. So I think what happened was that the space was taken as the surname instead of the actual word. So how to leave a space between two words is simply by doing a comma. I think that you can probably do it like this as well. Let's just try it out and check. Yes, you can do it that way as well. So I hope that we come on to this later on, but you can join strings with plus signs as well as other things. So you don't have to use plus just for integers or numbers. You can use it in strings, but it means a different thing. I don't remember what it was called. It was over something. It might have been overloading. No, I don't think it was overloading, but yeah. Just know that you can use either a comma or a plus with a blank space in between. That's all you need to know for now. So moving on. Address book programs usually have a screen that lists all of the contacts. Let's build that feature. So I'm guessing we're going to be using some loops. We could write out separate lines of code to display all of the people like in the last exercise, but that's tedious. Instead, we can use a for loop to do this automatically, as I suggested. So we'll be creating a function that lists all of the users. Create a function called list, so, oops, not like that, equals function. Does it take in anything? It takes in contacts, I believe. So, oh, that does not take in any parameters. Okay, fair enough. At the start of the function, define a variable to store the number of items in the contacts array. Call it contacts length. Okay, so contacts length equals contacts dot length, I believe. I think that that's how it was done to get the length of an array. If it's not, we can just check the hint, but for now let's see the next step. All of the items in an array are numbered starting at 0. To cycle through all of the elements of the array, create a for loop that cycles from 0 up to the last contact, which we got from length. So that's easy. So how you use a for loop again is declaring a variable first, which in this case should start at 0. Then until when should it do the thing? So until I doesn't equal contacts length, and then after each cycle increase I by 1. And then inside the body of our for loop, what we want to do is inside the loop add code to call print person, passing in the element of the array that the loop is currently at. So we need to call the function print person, which we made in the lesson in the part 2, in the second part I think it was, or the part before this one, and we want to give it whatever I is, or the index of I in the list of contacts. So basically this, because so if I is 0, then it's going to access Bob, and Bob is going to be passed here, so what's going to be printed out is Bob Jones, or should be anyway. Let's see what happens. So actually let's do step 5 first. At the very bottom of the file, call the list function. The list function should then loop through every member of the contacts array and print out its information. Okay, we have done something wrong. Contents, where did I do that? It's not even giving me a line. That's annoying. Make sure you're properly defined. Contents is not defined. Can I search for contents? Control F, please. Okay, contents. Here we go. Contacts. That's where I went wrong. There we go. So let's actually explain what this does now. So the code the compiler looks at all of that and skips through it. It just notices that it's there because nothing is actually happening, except for here where we declare a variable or a list of things. Then once we call a function, which the function is called list, it enters the body of this function. So the first thing that happens is you get the length of a list, which in our case is contacts. So in this case, the length of that list is 2. So contacts length equals 2. Then we enter this for loop where I is equal to 0. So we make our iterator, in this case called I, and make it equal 0. And we say while I isn't equal to the contacts list, or the length of the contacts list, then do whatever is in the body, and after each time you've done whatever is in the body, increase I by 1. And once this is true, then it exits the for loop. Inside the body, what we do is, again, we call another function called print person. So let's find that function. So here it is. Print person is here. And we pass the argument. So because print person requires an argument, we pass the argument at which I at index of I in contacts. So say I is 0 here, we enter contacts with 0. So what we take is contact 0. In this case, that's Bob. And we look at Bob. Bob's first name is Bob and last name is Jones. So that's just for us to check. So once we pass that argument to our print person function, what happens is we log their first name and their last name. Then that gets printed out to the console straight away without anything being returned. Once that is done, we enter the for loop again with I equaling 1. And the same thing, so the same thing as with Bob is done with Mary, which means that this function is entered, so Mary's first name is printed as well as their last name. And then the for loop is entered again with I equals 2, but it checks, is I equal to the contact's length? Where contact's length is 2, yes it is, so it just exits the for loop, not executing this for the last time, for another time. So hopefully that makes sense. I know that I explained it all over the place, but that is how code usually works, so you have to kind of learn to follow that through. So if that doesn't make sense, do feel free to ask in the comments. I will try to explain it once again if needed. So let's move on. Finding that special someone. Let's say we're looking for someone in our address book with a specific last name or first name, depending on how you set out your program or your phone book list. We can do this with a technique for searching arrays called linear search. So that sounds interesting. I don't think that exists in Python. With it, we use a loop to check through all of the items in the array one by one until we see the item that we want. Oh, so we actually make it. That does exist in Python, never mind. We can apply linear search to print out all of the people that have a particular last name. So our task will be creating a function that can search for people with a specific last name and print those people out with the print person function. So step number 1, create a function called search. Let's just do that then. Let's read what this says. Create a search function, then call it passing Jones. Oh, okay. So what we need to do is create a function called search. Oops, not minus, equals. And I can't spell today or pronounce for some reason. That takes a parameter called last name. There we go. Leave the list function alone. Okay, whatever that's supposed to mean. Like with the last exercise, define a variable and store the number of items in the array in it. I think it just means copy this line over. That's just what I'm inferring here. Since every function has its own context or scope, you can call this variable contact's length too if you like. Oh yes, so once this function is exited, contact's length is going to be destroyed, so it's no longer going to exist in memory. So if you enter this function again, contact's length is not going to equal 2 at the start, unless you do what you do here and keep contacts same, then it is going to equal 2 because you're initializing it to equal 2. But if you call this and then change contacts to equal to have 3 elements in it and then call this, contact's length is going to be equal to 3. And before you calling this function, contact's length is not going to exist unless you're inside this function, in which case once you exit this function, you are going to destroy contact's length. Hopefully that makes sense. So what we need to do next is step 3, create a for loop that runs through all of the items in the array. For this step, code for search is identical to that of list. So it's telling us copy this over, I think. But I'm guessing that we will need to be looking at it a bit differently. So the twist comes here in the body of the loop. So rather than doing this, add an if statement that checks to see if the last name property of the object is equal to the last name argument. So if contacts I dot last name is equal to last name, which is our argument. I'll explain it once I finish it as well. Hopefully it's making sense so far. Have the function run print person on the person if and only if the last name property of the person matches the last name argument. So have the print person run this on the person that we are looking at. So we need to just copy this. There we go. At the bottom of the file, so at the very end, call the search function, passing Jones as the last name to search for. And that's Mary Jones, I believe. Oh no, Bob Jones. Okay, so let's see what happens. There we go. So it works. Oh no, both of them. Wait, what? Bob Jones and Mary Jones. Do they both have the same surname? No, they don't. That's weird. I don't know why that's happened. I don't think we ever change it. I don't know why it's printing it out like that. That's weird. Okay, so let's actually explain what this does. So we have made a new function, completely new, which works a bit similar to the previous function that we made, but has its own things that it does. So this function requires an argument last name. In last name, you pass the last name of a person that you're looking for. Then, once you enter the function, you create a new variable called contacts length, which just gets the length of the list of contacts that you have. So if you have 3 contacts in your contacts book, contacts length is going to equal 3. That's just so that here we don't have to use the dot notation. So you could do it like that as well, but this is a lot clearer because you know exactly what you're dealing with. Then we enter this for loop where we have an iterator I, and at the start it's equal to 1. I mean, not to 1, to 0. So once we enter the for loop, we check if the last name of the person that is at the index of I, so at the index of 0 in the first case, in contacts is equal to our last name, so to the argument. So basically, does the last name that we're asking for equal to the last name that we're looking at in the phone book? If it does, then we're saying print person, and we covered that function previously. If it doesn't, then nothing happens. And then we exit, well, we never actually entered it, but we entered that function with, we entered the function with Jones. So let's see what happens. So we say contacts length is equal to 2, we enter I equals 0, and then say, does the last name that we said, so does Jones equal to that last name that we're looking at? So for Bob, it's true. So basically it's going to print out Bob Jones. I honestly hope that I'm making sense with what I'm saying, but do feel free to ask in the comments, as I have repeated 5 times I believe in this video now. Okay, so let's move on to our last lesson of the day. We have our address book in the contacts array, but what if we make a new friend and want to add them as well? Objects, just like other types of data, can be put into arrays with a array position equals object statement. To append something to the end of the array, you need to put it in the position 1 after the last item. So in this case, that's going to be 2. Since arrays are numbered starting at 0, the number of last item in the array will be 1 less than the quantity of the items of the array. So the size of the array is thus the position to insert at. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it does. So the length of an array, like the length of a string, can be found with array.length, as we have done here. We can do the insert in a succinct way by adding the new object directly into the array position without even giving it a name. This can be confusing, but we will all be able to refer to it by its array position, so it doesn't need a direct name. So what we can do is something like this. So in contacts, we add the position of contacts.length, we add another person. Assuming you define the add function with the parameters first name, last name, phone number, and email, it's not going to be confusing. That will automatically create a new object and add it into the array. So that's quite cool. We'll be creating a function that allows us to add our new friend to the address book. Hopefully, like here somewhere. That's quite a long piece of code for doing it in a web browser. I couldn't remember the word there for some reason. That's weird. So create a function called add. Var add equals function. and with the parameters first name, last name, email, and phone number. So it takes in those parameters. So this function is going to take in 4 parameters. In this new function, you want to create a new contacts object like Bob and Mary. Instead of having this object's property values be filled with strings though, set them to the appropriate function parameters passed in. So basically what it's telling us to do is first name, colon, first name, and then comma. So basically it's just copying everything twice. I will try to explain why this works. So this is defining how it's going to be stored, so under what name you're storing something, and then you're saying what you're actually storing. First name is going to have its own value once you pass the argument into the function. So at first name you're going to be storing a first name. At last name you're going to be storing a last name. At email you're going to be storing an email, and at phone number you're going to be storing a phone number, which is why this works. So add this new contact object to the contacts array. So I'm guessing that we need to do that at the end of this function. And it told us how to do that by doing it like this, I think, right? So this function is supposed to do this thing. Oh, so we could have just copied it. I think that's how we should do it. Let's see what happens anyway. So call add with whatever first name, last name, phone number, and email arguments you like. So let's call add. First name, I don't know that, because I'm just too lazy right now. Last name, that. Email, that at gmail.com, because that's how I feel like it. And phone number, that phone number. Oops, I did not mean to do it like that. There we go. Yes, it does store phone numbers as a string and not an integer. So make sure you call the list function to check if your new entry is added. Wait, we're inside brackets. We're not supposed to be inside the curly brackets. That is wrong, I think. I don't know why those curly brackets were there in the first place. That was weird. And I don't remember actually closing that with the semicolon. Have I done something wrong? I don't think I have. So let's see. So at the end we need to check the list to see what has happened. Okay, unexpected end of input. That is very weird. Is it because of the curly brace? Yes, it was. Okay, so curly brace, whatever it was doing there, I have no idea. And we got a badge. So let's actually explain what this does. So we make a function that literally all it does is add things to our contacts list. So as it explained here, to be able to add something new to our list, to know the location where we can add it, we can easily do contacts.length, because because indexes start at 0, we can easily do it that way. And then we say at first name, store first name, and we're doing all of this inside the contacts array. And so we're basically making a new entry into our phone book with the entry with the person's information being the arguments that are passed to the function. So that's basically the lesson, guys. If anything didn't make sense, do feel free to ask in the comments. I tried my best to explain, but I will do even better if need be. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy it, dislike it and tell me how I can improve next time so that you do like it. And that you do share it with your friends so that I can get more views and be more motivated to make more videos, because That's fun. Making videos is always fun. Even if you don't do that, I will probably still continue making videos because I enjoy programming quite a lot. But yeah, until next time, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.